Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Yolanda Melody. This video is gonna be the ultimate guide to how to look after your Venus flytrap. In this video, we're going to discuss everything about the Venus flytrap, from sunlight requirements to water requirements, what soil does it need, how to ensure that your Venus flytrap flourishes and grows as quickly as possible, and all the other things in between. When I first got my Venus flytrap, I watched so many different videos desperately trying to find out how to look after it. And it took a lot of research and a lot of videos to gather all of this information. But I'm not just going to be speaking from theory, I'm going to be speaking from experience. The Venus flytrap that you see behind me is one that I've been looking after for a very, very long time, and I've watched this plant go from a little tiny weeny baby to this monster that just keeps on growing and really needs repotting, to be honest. This plant was the plant that really kicked off my plant obsession, because this plant has a lot of special requirements that I had never even heard of before, but it's just so cool. So anyway, let's just get into the video. So, just so everyone's aware, the Venus flytrap is a flowering plant best known for its carnivorous eating habits. The trap is made of two hinged lobes at the end of each leaf. On the inner surfaces of the lobes are hair-like projections called trichomes that cause the lobes to snap shut when prey comes in contact with them. One of the number one reasons why I was so intrigued by this plant is that it doesn't just stay still. I remember when I was really little, my mom had one of these, and I was so intrigued by the fact that these traps that are on the plant close. They actually catch flies and eat them. But anyway, if you're on this video, obviously you know what they are, and you're probably already obsessed. So let's just get on to the first point. Sunlight requirements. Now, some people tell you that this is predominantly an outdoor plant, but I beg to differ. You can keep this as a house plant. Evidently, this one has flourished so much by being on my windowsill, where it's getting a ton of sunlight every single day. So it says here that you should provide 6 or more hours of direct sunlight for vigorous growth. I haven't been counting how many hours of sunlight exactly that my plant is getting, but for the most sunlight you want to be putting this plant in a south-facing window, preferably on the windowsill or as close to the windowsill as you can get. Now, here's an interesting thing. Venus flytraps actually go through a dormancy period. Now, this is where a lot of people throw their Venus flytrap away because they think that it's dying or that it's dead. But what actually is happening is it's going into a hibernation phase. These plants have adapted to have a hibernation phase, and they actually need the winter, strangely. So whatever you do, don't give up on your Venus flytrap if it's starting to wither in the winter, because more than likely it's just going through the dormancy period and it will come back and flourish in the summer and the spring. Okay, water. This is a really important one. This is a very high maintenance plant. The Venus flytrap likes to be constantly moist. Sorry for the people who hate that word. It likes a lot of water, but not just any type of water. This plant requires only distilled water or rainwater. Now, if you have difficulty cultivating that type of water, you may want to think about that before you buy your Venus flytrap, because it can get a little bit tricky for me in particular. If you were to give this plant tap water or mineral water, eventually it will kill the plant, because this plant gets its nutrients from its prey. That's how the plant has learnt to adapt. And because of this, you also need to be careful what pot you put it in. If you were to plant the Venus flytrap in a terracotta pot or a clay pot, the minerals from the pot will seep into the potting mix and eventually will harm the plant. So you want to be putting it in non-organic materials such as plastic. But to make it so much less complicated, let me just explain what I've done. Because I'm obsessed with aesthetics and I don't want anything looking ugly, I bought the Venus flytrap a pretty plastic pot with holes in the bottom, obviously, and then underneath what I have is a plastic tray, and I actually water this plant from the bottom, because another thing you have to think about is you don't want to be triggering triggering off the traps if it has no prey, which we'll get onto in a little bit. The easiest way to keep on top of the watering schedule is to just keep filling up that tray. I usually fill this tray up to the brim, and within a day, in the summer, it drinks the whole lot. It's like... It's crazy. So this is what I mean by it's a very high maintenance plant, just like its owner. Okay, the next part is the soil or potting mix requirements. What should you pot this in? The simple answer that I'm gonna give is 50% sphagnum moss and 50% perlite or vermiculite. Now, if you're not experienced with carnivorous plants or plants in general, this is going to sound like some kind of foreign language because it did to me, okay? I will own up and say that. Sphagnum moss can be bought either on Amazon or in most garden centres, and the same goes for perlite or vermiculite. And you basically just mix 50% of each into each other, and it's like a custom made mix. You can also buy a carnivorous plant potting mix, but personally I just found it too expensive, to be honest, and that's not what I did. And I'm glad I didn't, because my carnivorous plants have really just gone crazy with growth. A little side note about vermiculite versus perlite. So for my Venus flytrap, I mixed vermiculite and sphagnum moss. And like I say, it's done really well. However, when you go on Google, it actually says not to use vermiculite, but I don't know, I think there's a conspiracy going there. So in my personal opinion, perlite and the vermiculite, they're both as good as each other. That is what I'm going to recommend. Okay, feeding. A huge misconception is that you should actively feed your plant. I've seen some people online that actually feed dead insects to the Venus flytrap, and as I was doing more research, I discovered that it's not a good idea to do that. The reason why is that, first off, this plant knows what it's doing. It's perfectly able to catch its own prey. Now, if it's in an environment where there are literally never any flies or insects, it can survive without prey, but the prey really does help it grow quickly. However, the prey must be alive when the trap closes. And this is why I don't think it's a good idea to be feeding dead insects, because they're dead. While we're on that subject of triggering traps, this is a number one rule, right? No matter how tempted you are, do not be triggering these traps with no prey at all, just to see them close. Because it takes so much of the plant's energy to close the trap that it needs to be able to feed off the prey in order to replenish that energy. It's kind of like if you were to just do cardio all day long but not eat. You're gonna be in a calorie deficit. Well, the same goes for the plant, really. Another fun fact, just so that you know, I found this really interesting, right? When the trap closes, what actually happens is it turns its prey into a soup. And this process takes a few days, and then eventually, when the plant is ready, it'll start to open the trap back up. And as it's opening the trap back up, you'll start to see that there's dead insect skeletons in there. I will try and find you an example to just show this on screen. For some people, this might be really gross and put them off. For me, I just find it really interesting because I am creepy. Evidently. What you want to do is preferably have some tweezers or something that you use specifically for the plant, and carefully, ever so carefully, when the trap is completely open, you just want to pick the dead insect or the insect shell out. Because if you don't, eventually it will start to kind of go all like mouldy and icky. It's just not good to keep it in there. Just take the skeleton out. Just do it. Now, if you're worried about triggering the trap while you're doing this, here's a little thing to note. The way that the trap is triggered is from these fine little hairs. Depending on the size of the trap, it'll have 2 to 4 hairs on each side of the trap. The trap will only close if you trigger one of these hairs, but if you touch around the hairs or in between, it won't trigger the trap. Another thing to note is these hairs need to be triggered twice in order to close. It's kind of like playing a game of Operation. And last but not least, Pruning, 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 pruning. This is what's going to help your trap grow. So what you will find with all plants is that sometimes a leaf, a branch, or a trap will start to look like it's dying, or that it's going a bit crispy, or it's just not healthy looking. This can happen for a number of reasons. It's not a sign that your plant is dying, it's just the life cycle is over for that trap, for example. What I have found is as soon as a trap starts to show the signs of not being completely healthy, sometimes you'll get like a brown crispy mark or blemish on one of the traps. What you want to do is trim that off right at the base and get it off, because what your plant is doing is it's wasting its energy on a trap that's essentially on the wind down. That trap is eventually going to crisp up and then it will go black, and you're gonna end up taking it off anyway. So you may as well just take it off now, and what you will find is that overnight the plant will show new growth that's healthy and prosperous. And that is it. That was my version of the ultimate guide on how to look after your Venus flytrap. If you found this video informative, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to drop me a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Love you, bye!